What's up everyone? My name is Cam. I am a certified dog nutritionist and founder of the Dog Nutritionist. Today I'm going to be talking about what probably is my specialist subject, recipes for dogs that need kidney support. I just want you to know I completely understand the stress that you're going through, that you are doing exactly the right thing by adjusting their diet to be supportive of this issue. It's really important that you watch this video until the end so you have all the information ready for you to use and take forward to help your dog. Right, so we're just going to talk a little bit about what the kidneys do, what causes kidney issues, just because that will help you learn about the best way to look after your dog going forwards. The kidneys work to remove waste that gets into the bloodstream via the digestive process. It also regulates blood pressure and the amount of water that's in the blood. Those are the jobs that the kidneys have. What are the causes of loss of renal function? Well, the main causes are gut microbiome dysbiosis, too much waste in the food, high blood pressure, bacterial infection, and periodontal disease. Of all things, if your dog's teeth and mouth are full of bacteria, well, that goes into their gut, gets ingested through the small intestines into the blood and works its way into the kidneys. That is how connected your dog's gut is and why it's so important that you address their diet to provide maximum support. So what are the best possible management techniques for your dog? Each stage is different. Generally for stage 1, I would just recommend a healthy, fresh food diet. That will mean that their gut's being used appropriately, the waste levels won't be too high or too big. The use of a naturally balanced fresh food will mean that the levels of bacteria are balanced, and that will ensure that, infection chances are minimized. And also, some dogs do just have slightly higher levels of creatinine and urea. So a different management is not really necessary. Just use super healthy recipes. Stage 2, 3, well, these are slightly different. Stage 2 does require a specific recipe like this one, and stage 3 also requires a slightly different cooking method. I'll get into that in a minute. And then stage 4, you'll need a different recipe to the one here. This recipe is for stage 2 and stage 3 dogs. You can also feed it to your dog if they are stage 1. Now, one massive myth about renal diets or kidney support diets is that you need a low protein diet. This is a big load of nonsense cooked up by 1 or 2 pet food companies so they can shift the same product to every single dog. In actual fact, there's no research that suggests protein contributes to renal disease progression. There is some research that slightly suggests phosphorus may contribute to renal disease progression, and some of you will be saying, but phosphorus is in meat, it is in protein sources, and you'd be right. We don't want to change our dog's diet too far away from what is natural. That would be untherapeutic. We are going to maintain a protein level and use quality proteins, but we're going to mitigate the phosphorus through boiling the food. Boiling works to demineralize the meat whilst maintaining the protein, and that is really important because we don't want restrictive diets. Highly restricted diets, particularly low protein, will see your dog suffer in so many other areas. Their dog has been on that nasty, stinky, dry food or wet tin food. Coat starts to dull, their skin starts to get flaky and dry, and then they start to lose mobility. And these are only the issues you can see by putting those highly restrictive diets on your dog. In actual fact, the optimal way to deal with kidney disease is to make sure the causes of lost functionality are addressed. Use the healthiest possible diet, and that will free up more functionality because there'll be less jobs for the kidneys to do. Now we can talk about the ingredients. We are going to be using chicken. Again, some of you will be like, that's high in protein, that's high in phosphorus. Yes, but dogs need protein. They are carnivores. To take protein out of their diet would be 1, silly, and 2, impossible. We're going to mitigate the phosphorus in this by boiling it. So just chop all this up into small chunks. In this recipe, there's going to be approximately 60% meat. You might think that is really high protein, but for me, I think that's quite a low protein diet for a dog. They have evolved to digest high meat diets. So this is working alongside their physiology, reacting to the issue that they have and not being too restrictive. That is the ideal way to provide support. If you're looking for the exact quantities, you want to find out more information on this issue of protein, phosphorus, then click the link in the description. So once you've chopped it into chunks that are about the size that your dog can eat without separating the meat from the other ingredients, that's really important because dogs are way more inclined to eat meat than they are veggies, but we want them to eat the veggies because they're healthy. You may need to make these slightly smaller just so the food is all mixed in well. Then we're going to take liver. Venison liver, you can use any liver that you can find. This is going to make up 10% of the total meal. Take a pot, I've boiled the kettle, and I'm going to put a little bit of the boiling water. Then I'm going to put all this meat into there. I'm just doing that so it doesn't stick to the bottom, and then I'm going to fill it up until the meat is totally covered. Now I'm going to put this on to boil for 10 minutes, depending on how big the chunks you've cooked are. If they're larger, boil them for longer. Whilst that's cooking, I am going to prepare the carbs that we're going to be putting in. In this recipe, I'm going to recommend that butternut squash is 20 to 25% of the overall recipe. Just a centimetre of water goes in there, lid on, and then it steams for 10 minutes. Okay, whilst those are steaming away, we're just going to prepare the other non-meats. If your dog has a more sensitive stomach, then you can steam them with the squashes. I am going to use cauliflower, and I am going to steam it, I've decided. This should make up 10 to 15% of your dog's meal. I'm not doing these all completely exact, and that's because the proportions I'm giving you are slightly different because they are a guide. You need to stick to those within those ranges, but kind of work out what works for your dog. I've had dogs that are on stage 2 that we just transition them fully to raw food with around 20% non-meats, and the diet has still worked wonderfully. I'm just providing more non-meats in this recipe so that it can help more dogs suffering from more of the stages, stage 2 to 3. You can also sprinkle on some natural herbs and a small pinch of salt. Sodium levels are restricted if you put a small pinch of salt in. It's not unhealthy. That is it. That is how you make a super healthy, supportive diet for your dog. So we have our boiled meat here, our steamed squash and vegetables. And now we're going to mix these together. Meat in. We're going to chop these up into small chunks so your dog can't pick them out. That is the important part. In that goes. Then we have this lovely squash here, which we're going to mix in. Chuck it all in. The other ingredients we are going to include in this recipe are egg and eggshell. Ground eggshell, the calcium is a phosphate binder. It can help reduce the absorption of phosphorus, which is really important. Try to use quality eggs if you're going to use the eggshell. If you're not going to use eggshell or egg, get a calcium supplement and put 2 grams per kilogram or 1 gram per pound if you're in America. If your dog has high calcium levels in the blood, you can remove calcium for a period of time, but it needs to be reintroduced after a few weeks. Stages 2, 3, and 1, the whole egg in the recipe is okay. Stage 4, I'd probably say avoid the yolk, and we cut down the phosphorus within the recipe. If your dog doesn't do well on egg, then you can use epacatin, which is a type of calcium-based phosphate binder. We've got a small handful of blueberries per kilogram of food you make. Blueberries are a superfood full of antioxidants which work to destroy free radical cells, and free radical cells damage the body. These are just to make the recipe more healthy. Chop them up as well, just so that your dog can't snuffle them out. In those go. Honey, 1 teaspoon per kilogram of food, and mix it in. It contains phosphatase, which is a phosphate binder. Also, it helps with digestion. Finally, we are going to sprinkle in some fresh herbs. Herbs are antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, and we know that bacterial infection and long-term low-grade inflammation play a role in lost renal function. I'm going to be using oregano today. They don't need to be too chopped up. It's just loosely around a tablespoon per kilogram of food that you make. And I'm just going to rip it up and sprinkle it in. Look how amazing this looks. That is what healthy food for renal support looks like. Your dog is going to absolutely love this meal, and that is a hugely important part of the therapeutic process of providing the most amount of support possible. Once you've made this, put it into plastic containers. Make sure it's cold before you put it into the plastic containers. We don't want microplastics being leached into this meal. We want to keep this as fresh and as clean and as amazing as possible. Once it's defrosted, it will last 5 days in the fridge. Thank you for watching this. If you need more support or you want more recipes for kidney health and kidney support, get onto my website. You can find them there.